Podcast episode number 28. CorporateMOM enables blueprint for $1.5 trillion economy, effort per person, EPP, the GDP GNH multiplier. Gujarat State, GSDP $1.5 trillion 2024. A template for GDP GNH combo. Corporate atomic structure. Confucius says, when it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. Copyright, CorporateMOM, Corporate Management Orbiter Mission.
CorporateMOM, effort per person, EPP, GDP GNH multiplier. There's an excerpts. Number 1. Excerpts from CorporateMOM breaks into the Boys Only Club, which I had earlier released. Number 1, SDG goal number 5, gender equality, women empowerment, women equity expounded. Number 2, CorporateMOM, corporate management orbiter mission. Women bring the stability. The orbiter mission will be supporting the CEO and workforce, who constantly spin around the nucleus made up of the board and the society's demands and expectations. Number 3, women empowerment bestows women to take charge of ethical co-responsibility for the companies they work for, in addition to the fiscal responsibility they undertake. Women hold dual responsibility. Number 4, fiscal, ethical, co-responsibility factors of SOS subject-object self-governance standards by which Volkswagen framework is prepared. In this episode number 28, I am bringing in the need for creating a framework for each and every company that we look into of all the industry groups that would made up of the GDP. Number 2, preamble. In this podcast episode number 28, I am presenting CorporateMOM, effort per person, and EPP GDP GNH multiplier with a case study on GSDP $1.5 trillion US dollar 2024. Gujarat's gross state domestic product, GSDP, I call it from now on as the blueprint, prepared in January 2020, a review on what we proposed and how we disposed of. You can download the full analytics from my ibcm.in webpage. I prepared the blueprint for GSDP 1.5 trillion US dollars in 2024 at the request of FIA, Federation of Industries and Associations, Ahmedabad, Gujarat. The blueprint analysis took into account the actuals from 2012-2018 and quick estimates from 2018 and 19 as prepared by the state government of Gujarat. Projected figures for 1.5 trillion US dollar in 2024. Please see the following in 3 parts. The blueprint for 1.5 trillion US dollar expected a CAGR of 41.38% for a consistent period of 5 years. This is part of the blueprint. For GSDP $1.5 trillion in 2024, part 1. If you look at that industry group, it's a very interesting one. The first one is agriculture, forestry and fishing. It includes crops, livestock, forestry and logging, fishing and aquaculture. Number 2, mining and quarrying. The subtotal primary is being arrived at. I will take into account the first one separately in GSDP, where emphasis would be on manufacturing things which follows: manufacturing, electricity, gas, water and other utility services. And 5, construction, a subtotal of secondary industry group is being given. Agriculture is very important. I will be coming out separately on that. Quite a number of farmers in Gujarat alone is about 13 million, and you have total of India's more than about 550 million farmers. Agriculture is number one. They are lagging behind China in terms of total. Agriculture is about $450 billion for India. It has to reach $1 trillion to keep pace with China. It's very important that agriculture I will come out with separately. Here we are looking at that EPP, GDP and GNH multiplier. How do we do that in manufacturing and other areas? This is what part 1. Please have a look at the statistics. Here I am giving the blueprint for GSDP $1.5 trillion in 2024, part 2. It has among the industry group trade, repairs, services, hotels and restaurants. Number 7, transport, storage, communication and services related to broadcasting. It has quite a number of railways, important ones. Number 8 is financial services. Number 9 is real estate ownership of dwelling and professional services. Number 10, public administration. All of them are costs as well as growth in terms of GDP accumulator. What we are looking at is not the quantum at this point of time. We are in the fag end of the 5 analytics of GSDP $1.5 trillion, and we have reached the final year of 2024. So what we are looking at is how CorporateMOM will be in a position to bring about uniformity and give an impetus for each and every one of the industry groups has been done. It's not that we have a target of $1.5 trillion or any amount X or Y or Z, but it's not that everybody reaches it. There will always be adverse variances. So what we are looking at fundamentally, if there are shortfall, how the shortfall is going to be analyzed, and as well as bring about a solution in terms of attacking the target in a more matured manner. That's what CorporateMOM stands. The blueprint for GSDP $1.5 trillion in 2024, part 3. Part 3 is a total of all the subtotals. You have gross state value added at basic prices, which is plus product taxes minus product subsidies. You arrive at a total figure of in terms of gross, and what had been worked out for 2023-24, if you look like it, is about 1499.96 billions. That's about $1.5 trillion. When we calculate in terms of gross and we connect that with 70 rupees per dollar, today is about 80 or 85 rupees per dollar. So you strive to make more and more GDP accumulator, but the exchange value can bring about a complete change in terms of revising it to 1499 at 85 could be 10 to 15% lower. So if you look at it, is about 1.5 trillion dollar, but in terms of 70 rupees per dollar. This has to be taken into account, and when we try to bring about at 85, you have to recast your this thing, or make your rupee, the crores, more, not in terms of bringing it less. Let us keep that 1.5 trillion dollar as 1.5 trillion dollar, in order that we have to have it arrive at that figure. Let us try take the shape of as many crores that are needed. If it is 70 to 80, is 85 is about 10 or 15%. So if you have x crores, you have 1.15 x crores have to be created. So this is what it is, and have a look, and let us find it out how it is being done. We shall go to the next one. Number 3, GSDP picture in February 2023. Gujarat's gross state domestic product, GSDP, is estimated at rupees 22 lakhs crores, US dollar 288.73 billion in FY23, an increase of 13.3% year over year. And I have given where I culled the information from. 3.1 in the blueprint for GSDP 1.5 trillion in 2024, we are estimated to arrive at a figure of 1.06 trillion dollar by FY23 with a CAGR of 41.38%. What we have now is US dollar 288.73 billion for FY23. If we had to reach FY24 figure of GSDP 1.5 trillion dollar, CAGR would work out to 419% in a single year. Number 4, the same series, analytics. Our tendency is to extend the period of $1.5 trillion target from FY24 to FY28 or 29 or 30, like that it will go. Maintaining the status quo is our prime reasoning. We shall analyze the fault lines and come out with what we could change in terms of the GDP growth rate being triggered to a higher level. Let's continue with analytics. 4.1. Let me start with what Confucius said. When it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. That's what I would recommend for GSDP. 4.2. The blueprint presented compares Gujarat to South Korea, being similar in area and population, but South Korea had reached $1.5 trillion in 2020, whereas Gujarat had not. And continuing with analytics, 4.3. Reaching out to a target of $1.5 trillion is a good idea. While going through the statistics, 4.3.1, I found the delayed availability of figures, a minimum of 2 years, collecting the information and presenting to the national budget consolidation. The states and the central government find it impossible. I mentioned it in the blueprint quoting the economic survey of India presented a couple of days before the annual budget. Find the current data from various states as N bar A. Possibly it meant not available, but I termed it as not acceptable. Number 2, governance is a dynamic function. Attend to it first. CorporateMOM addresses the issue of SOS, subject, object, self-governance, comprehensively in a dynamic platform. I would like GDP figures to be metered to display on a screen at any time. Continuing on the analytics. Number 4. It is said man proposes, God disposes. Maybe it applies to the government and the corporate. On account of various industry groups, the government proposal is the lead indicator. But action must be generated from corporate. If you look at the industry group from the blueprint, all relate to corporate, although the initiative is from the government. 4.1. Why corporate finds it difficult to match government proposal, if at all there is one from the government? In GSDP, we find a CAGR of 419% in a single year. Can corporate take up the challenge, even if the government had proposed it or not? Why corporate needs someone to take the lead? Next in analytics, 4.2. China and corporate have common grounds, which is a hierarchical one-man call center with a retinue of secretaries and VPs respectively. Whereas the CCP penetrates into the foot soldier level, corporate management stops with the VPs. CCP may use force and corporate too. Whereas China executes the work and if not, execute the non-achievers. Corporate discusses the adverse variance analysis and VPs defend their own, blaming the other. A few sacrifice at the altar of being sacked, with good ones adding to the attrition wars. Corporate growth is stunted. Next, goal congruence. Both China and corporate have the same goal, the accomplishment of an infinite succession of finite purposes by controlling each goal. That is object governance. The denominator is different for different numerators. There is no goal congruence as such. CorporateMOM has created the SOS governance framework where the denominator is the same, 1, as to the energy force, and the numerator 1 or 0, action or inaction respectively, bringing out a binary value. There is a goal congruence. Each is a master of one's own destiny. Optimize level of performance. Continuing on the analytics, 4.4. In CorporateMOM, I have indicated the track of entanglement, moral, hedonistic, and economic aspects, as illustrated by Kinner's animal spirits. Kinner calls for a spontaneous urge to action rather than inaction. My IPR is IBCM, an activity-based cost management. Binary value of each person with subject-object self-governance frame, a return on intangible constructs an index of inactivity. 4.5. GSDP $1.5 trillion FY24 is targeted with a CAGR of 419% distributed to the various sectors. Assume your workforce of say 18 million. First distribute targets to each of them, each team comprising of 5 people. If there are 100k workforce, there would be 20k teams working independently but yoked together for a common task in each company. The spontaneous urge for action will follow as each person is assigned a job work. No force but a detailed strategy plan is needed. Next in analytics, point number 5. GDP GNH simultaneously integrate $1.5 trillion to GNH as set 5 criteria. Number 1, health. Number 2, education. Number 3, work. Number 4, personal happiness. And number 5, cities. CorporateMOM by merit. That is measure, record, implement and track the progress by return on intangible. In the same manner as CorporateMOM has already published the case study on Volkswagen, let every company prepare the targets set and tracked by merit. Next in analytics, point number 6, the spontaneous urge to action. This is what Animal Spirit says of Keynes, the spontaneous urge to action. One person who has set the ball rolling after Dhirubhai Ambani under this category is Gautam Adani. I've read the report by Swaminathan and Kaleshwari Iyer. Why Hindenburg report is a blessing in disguise for Gautam Adani. And I'm amazed by Gautam Adani's capability. He is a 26/11 terrorist attack survivor. He shall follow his OS governance framework and contribute more to India's growth in GDP GNH story. I like him. India needs it. Next point, number 7, analytics. Not to inaction. This is what Animal Spirit says. Spontaneous has to action, not to inaction. IBCM is an activity-based cost management. That's my IPR. Where activity is a cost incident, whereas inactivity has a cost consequence. That is where GSDP's $1.5 trillion stands today of inaction. The cost of inaction is high. It must be eliminated. In that process, let me also make a comment about George Soros. I went through the interview that George Soros does not want you to see. The publisher has mentioned in that YouTube. I am basically there to make money. I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do. That's what George Soros had said. And according to the publisher, George Soros really is as vile as they come. I agree with him. I publish in detail CorporateMOM, effort per person, EPP, GDP GNH multiplier. They should enable several states in India as well as South Asian countries to develop a system of increasing their growth in GDP GNH index and achieve much more. EPP is important in participation and partaking in the economic aspects of any country. They are the building blocks of corporate as well as the national grid of economic growth and societal changes. The content it has, the main one which you can download and have a look at. Intro, GSDP 1.5 trillion FY24. CREAM audit. CREAM stands for Corporate Governance, Risk Management, Earnings, Accounting Quality and Management Quality. That is how SOS governance framework is being done. CREAM strategy plan is a very, very important aspect. EPP, effort per person. CREAM action plan, how you are going to get everything done. IBCM, an activity-based cost management. A brief for details, check on the CorporateMOM, which I have given in my website, downloadable, ibcm.in. This IBCM has got about 5 principles. Principle number 1, what gets measured gets managed. Principle number 2, measure qualitative elements of management. Principle number 3, corporate atomic structure. Principle number 4, a return on intangible. Principle number 5, emergent property phenomenon. In fact, management is pretty simple. Let me summarize. The most important thing which I am trying to give is on GNH, Gross National Happiness Index, which was never integrated with GDP. And GDP again is completely a delayed document. Nobody bothered about it. When it comes out, data that you get in IMF or World Bank or OECD, all of them are greatly delayed as national budget for India. Now, let me quote from a UN document which was prepared by one Louis Coyantes. It was in 2012. It was a draft actually. Happiness toward a holistic approach to development. Coyantes states, to quote, moreover, most conclusions of happiness surveys are usually based on information from weird countries, where in the sense Western, educated, industrialized, rich democracies, limiting their credibility. That was in 2012. It holds good even today. We go by certain surveys of happiness index and is not relevant in my opinion. The International Fund for Agriculture Development, IFAD, this is what Louis Coyantes had mentioned, endorsed the Bhutan initiative, underlined the importance of happiness as a social and political objective, requiring social, political, and economic measures for its realization. IFAD emphasized that the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals was a precondition to the effective pursuit of happiness by the global population, including overcoming poverty and food insecurity within a framework of sustainable development and effective responses to climate change. Unquote. Now, this observation is important from the context of integrating development goals, all 17 SDGs of them connecting to the GNH index. This UN article was written in 2012, but development goals GDP and GNH could never be integrated. One is quantitative, that is GDP, and the other qualitative, that is GNH. Hence, CorporateMOM, effort per person, EPP GDP GNH multiplier should be taken as a priority. An organization must take it up further, lest we remain steadfast to the earth is as flat as a trencher outlook. My message: CorporateMOM, effort per person, EPP GDP GNH multiplier. Let me start with what Confucius had said. When it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. That is how I would recommend for pitching on a CAGR of 419%. I'd like you to go through CorporateMOM, a case study of Volkswagen. It had gone through bad time due to bad decisions, but has brought about a change, complete change, by adopting a value system, what Volkswagen calls T for I, together for integrity. Every company must go through the process. Integrating development goals, all 17 SDGs of them, connecting to the GNH index is crucial for societal changes, for recording the societal changes. This UN article of Louis Coyante was written in 2012, but development goals, GDP and GNH could never be integrated. One is quantitative, that is GDP, and the other qualitative, that is GNH. Hence, CorporateMOM, effort per person, EPP, GDP, GNH multiplier would be taken as a priority. An organization must take it up further, lest we remain steadfast to the earth is as flat as a trencher outlook. When we go through the number of companies involved in the industry group of GSDP, the animal spirits, when triggered, bring about a challenge for accomplishing what we have not attempted before. That must be the start. Not just states of India, but very many countries around the world do suffer such inertia. Leadership comes from within. Within a company, each person has to have the SOS governance responsibility. Have a go.